Hey everyone, I'm Alex Kokoros. This is episode 3 of Co-Courtside and first Zoom meeting actually. And today I have the pleasure of being here with Thanasis Petrakis, owner of Fresh Focus Sports, longtime cinematographer and documentarian within NBA entertainment, UFC, only to name a few. How you doing today, Thanasis?
I'm doing good, man. Thank you for the intro. And I'm actually working out here in Utah with the UFC right now. We do a docu-series every month called UFC Embedded. So that's why I'm on the road. That's why the hotel room is in the back. And yeah, it's this show is a 9 or 10 day shoot every month. And we follow fighters leading up to their pay-per-view event. So that's what I'm doing right now.
And what, you've been there for like a week or so?
Yeah, we usually start filming with the fighters Friday, and their fight is 8 days from there on the next Saturday. So right now is Wednesday. So the fight's in a couple of days. They weigh in 2 days. That's usually the first battle with UFC fighters or MMA fighters in general. You got to make weight. And the guy I'm filming is Jan Blachowicz, who's a 205 pounder. And if he wins this fight, he'll be fighting for the championship next. So the first thing you got to do is make weight so your fight goes on. And in the MMA world, like it's different than boxing. Boxers kind of stay around their natural weight. MMA guys fluctuate a lot. So
Right.
this particular one, it's not going to be a crazy weight cut, but a lot of times you'll see guys lose 10, 15 pounds the day before. It's pretty wild.
And so you're basically following him around the whole week and stuff, the build up to it? Uh,
Yeah, so like the premise of the show, it's called Embedded, a play on the sense that you're embedded in their camp, like you're always with them. So you obviously film training and MMA style stuff, but for instance, with this one, we went to the rodeo and filmed him. I filmed him going to like a Western store to get like a
saw
cowboy
that. Yeah, I saw you
outfit.
posted about that.
Uh, he Yesterday we went to a Western store to get a cowboy outfit for the press conference tomorrow. So like the purpose of the show is that our footage and our show is going to get you to like this fighter and root for him to win.
Mhm.
So you're not going to just do that off of practice footage or workout footage. You're going to have to know them as people. So when they're with their wives, when they're with their kids, eating, um, obviously you're not with them all the time. You set it up with them and, you film a couple of times a day with them and you try to give the fans an inside look at these fighters' lives, which is really cool because a lot of sports and a lot of professional athletes don't really allow as much access as this show. It's for a few reasons, but I think one of the main reasons is fighting in general, whether it's boxing, MMA, promotion is sort of natural to the sport, right? Like Muhammad Ali is before my time, it's before your time, but
Right.
you've even seen videos from the 60s and 70s with people in his camps because you have to promote the fights because you got to sell them. They're these like one individual things that you have to sell. Whereas a sport like basketball or football, it's a whole season. You're not usually just selling one moment. So, um, yeah, so it's sort of natural to the sport.
Yeah, so you kind of touched on it a little bit there, like getting in the mind of the fighter, and obviously you've been around a lot of star players, different sports. How is it different? Because these guys are fighting, putting their lives on the line. How is it just being around them for a week and just kind of getting into their minds of, like you said, the second life in a way?
Yeah, that's a good question. The real answer is it just depends on the fighter. Everyone is very different. Some people are locked in, you can't talk to them, you have to respect their space. But then other people are just fun loving. You would have no idea they have a fight coming up. And am I on mute? Oh, okay. Um,
Are you good?
I just saw the thing. Sorry, my technological skills ain't great. No, but what I was gonna say is this particular fighter, Jan Blachowicz, he does more in a fight week than I do on vacation or on a day off or anything. Like it's amazing how much this guy does. So it really depends on the fighter's personality. But you just as in my position as the cinematographer and for the basis of this show for people production related and want to know this show, what makes it special is it's one man band. It's it's the cinematographer is the producer, he's the audio guy, he's setting everything up. We're talking to the fighters, we're setting up the shoots, and you're the only person around. So on top of having a lot of production skills, you also have to have a social awareness and social skills of reading people's personalities. Um, so yeah, it's like everyone's different, but you also could gauge that in a couple of usually in a day, you could see how they're going to be. And then also one of the benefits of this show is the UFC does a really good job if we have a previous experience or if we filmed with a fighter in the past that you film with them again.
Hmm.
So then all those kind of questions are already answered going in. So for like instant, like I filmed Jan a couple of years ago in Abu Dhabi when he won the title. So I already knew his wife. I already knew, his style. It was going to be pretty easy for me to get acclimated. It's pretty rare that you're filming with someone for the first time, just because I've been doing the show 7, 8 years now. So like next month, I'm going to film with Aljamain Sterling. He's the 135 champion, and I filmed with him since he's been champion, and this is his like fifth fight as champion. So like I know exactly what's going to go with him because these guys pretty much keep the same routine. So once you're with someone for a while, you really understand what they like and what they don't like. And you just have to adapt to that. Like everyone's different. Like every athlete's different, but fighters for sure are very different. But I would say one overall thing with fighters is, at least in the MMA world, boxing's slightly different, but they're very humble people.
Hmm.
Very, very humble. Like they get what you're doing. They understand it's benefiting them. Not only are they humble, um, this is like sort of a new sport. So like they're not super uber duper famous. Like they're not LeBron James, right? Like Connor's the only one that could really put himself on that platform. So when you're dealing with a fighter, usually our show is benefiting them. Like the show usually
Right.
gets about 1 million views on YouTube an episode. There's 6 episodes a week. So, they're gaining fans, they're gaining Instagram followers. If you're doing a workout, you could toss on a shirt that sponsors you. Now your sponsor's happy. Like there's a lot of things that benefit them in this show. So, you know, it's a little different than a guy like say Zion Williamson's been famous since he's like in ninth
Yeah.
grade,
Yeah.
right? Like these guys don't have that luxury of doing that. There's no sneaker company waiting to give them $100 million when they enter the thing. So like it's a little bit more of a benefit to them than you would say an NBA guy.
Right. Well, and you kind of mentioned it before. I mean, it's a growing sport and company. My friends at school, they love it. I'm kind of getting more into it now, but it's something that continues to grow and grow. Have you seen that as your time goes on with it? So you said you started there 8 years ago. You can tell it's
Yeah, for
been
sure,
forever,
man,
right?
for sure. I think it's sort of plateaued a little bit, but I was there. My first fight ever filming for them was 2015 in January. And before Conor was champ, and the main event was Conor McGregor versus Dennis Siva. And that was sort of like the start of him going like that. Like, it was the next fight. So after that fight, he jumps over the cage to get into Jose Aldo's face. And that fight, the one versus Jose Aldo ends up making him a superstar. He KOs him in like 9 seconds or something like that. So yeah, I saw the rise of Conor. I was working. I mean, I wasn't filming him specifically. There's a staff shooter with the UFC who used to do his embeddeds. But I was in a corner of his opponents a lot. So I followed Habib from 2017 to the rest of his career. So I was in his corner for that fight. I was with Mayweather when he fought Conor. I was with Eddie Alvarez when he fought Conor. So I was always in his opponent's corner. So I saw that sort of rise. And I think he sort of got the sport to the next level. So yeah, I definitely saw that. My personal way I got into the sport, because I used to be much more of a boxing fan, is just the more you learn about it helps, obviously, just because there's things that people don't understand with jiu-jitsu, with the striking. It's different than what like the traditional sports we grew up with, in terms of boxing is what
Right.
I'm saying. But really is when I started to film fighters, I would just like this like one fighter that I filmed. And I'm like, I'm gonna
Mhm.
watch every one of his fights because that was a
Right.
cool dude. And
You
I
build a
really hope,
connection with them, right? Yeah.
yeah, you're like, I really hope that dude wins, man. That guy was a really
Yeah.
nice guy. And then I think more so than other sports, um, the analogy sort of I always use is like, say you're a huge Steph Curry fan, but he loses a game. It's like maybe he just missed a shot and they lost. It's not that like heartbreaking. Like the loss is heartbreaking if you're a fan, of course. But in a sport like this, if you lose, you could just be laid out unconscious in front of everybody. And like
Right.
it was 1 versus 1. It wasn't like you can't blame like the guy that came off the bench. Like you can't, say you can't blame anybody but yourself. And then not only is it accountability completely on yourself, like it's a drastic way to lose. Like you get knocked out and you wake up in front of all these people and you're like, "Oh my god." You know what I mean? So
Right.
in that sense, there's just a lot of drama on the line. It's a fight. It's like if there was if you were at school in high school and people were playing a basketball game one on one, how many people would watch versus if there was a fight breaking out one on one?
No, it's
That's sort of a good way
funny.
to
Yeah.
look at it too. There's just
Right.
like a lot on the line. So to some people it could be barbaric, and I totally get that. Like at first when I was younger, the blood of the sport sort of it turned me away from it and I liked boxing more, as I mentioned, but I think that's just a visual thing. MMA is actually a safer sport than boxing, and I think
Yeah.
the results show that. Um Not to get too deep into it, but basically the visual, the blood is looks worse. But with boxing, and you see it, the reason why I said the results show that is there's deaths in boxing every year.
Yeah.
And it's because the glove allows you to just keep on hitting. Whereas in MMA, it's a small glove. You can only hit so hard before you're gonna hurt your hand. Um, and with boxing, if you might not see bleeding on the inside, but the dangerous part is the bleeding on the inside. I mean, on the outside, the dangerous part is the bleeding on the inside of the brain.
Mhm.
And that's where you actually start to see really like, fatal injuries or just like really bad injuries. Like I filmed a story on this guy in California that had internal bleeding and he was like 26 years old. And now he drives an Uber and he, you know, runs a boxing gym and just teaches lessons, but his career was over. He like split his head open. And like I've been in the sport for 8 years in MMA and I've never seen anything like that. It looks bad.
It's just
Like you're
bad. Yeah.
definitely like I've been at fights where you're like, oh, like like
Yeah.
but for the most part, it's a safer sport. It's just hard to explain that to someone because the visual is so graphic.
He talks about McGregor. Obviously, he's an absolute character. Is he as advertised as he is, like on social media? Is he the same way in person? You said you've been around.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a dynamic dude, man. Yeah.
It's funny,
He's
man.
I think he's very similar to how he is on camera. I think I don't think it's an act. Like, I also think he's like one of the best personalities or
Yeah.
talkers sports has seen in a really long time. Like he's charismatic, he's funny, um, he's quick-witted, like, in press conference and stuff like that. Like he really makes people laugh. And then in terms of content, in terms of people wanting to see him, it's like crazy, man. Like on our show, if we put a keyframe of Conor McGregor as like the poster on YouTube, like it's gonna do better than anything, even if he's only in the show for 30 seconds. Like he is
Wild.
he is an absolute star and people really are attracted to him. I think obviously that's gone down a little bit just
Mm.
because that's what happens with everyone's career.
Right.
No, he's definitely how he is on camera. It's not an act. And yeah, he's dynamic, man. He's funny too. Like, I mean, I don't know how much I could say about this, but just I won't say like names, but there's definitely been opponents that I followed of his that like on the side were like, yo, he's funny. Like, even though
Yeah.
he's talking about
Yeah.
them. Um, but yeah.
No, those press conferences are something else. You see it on like an Instagram short or something, but he's hilarious. Those are a lot of UFC questions. I want to talk about the NBA a little bit.
Yeah, for
Obviously,
sure.
you've
That's
been there.
that was my bread and butter for a long time. That's
Yeah,
where I started.
yeah, you were there. I think a good amount of time before the UFC, correct?
Yeah, I interned with the NBA in 2003 going into my senior year of college. And that was the year LeBron got drafted. I was working with NBA TV, a little bit with Inside Stuff. And then the next year, once I graduated, I came back in 2004. I worked as a logger, which probably people don't know what that is, but essentially, before things were digitized, we would set in and out points on like everything that was coming into the building. So it was a live game, or if someone did like a specialty shoot with somebody, like in the field, they were with their kids, whatever it
Right.
was, we would basically set an in point and an out point and then write a description.
Mhm.
And that description is, and then we would put like drop down menus like, you know, LeBron James dunk and, at Seattle or something like that. And all those drop down menus basically built this thing where you could search and editors could go in and find everything that they're looking for. So when you log, you were sort of like the first step of the building
Mhm.
where like you're organizing all this footage that people are going to use for years to come. So if someone was trying to like visualize it, just think of almost like an internal YouTube that we had at our thing. So instead of like everyone looking at this, we could go in and search with your whatever, LeBron James dunk at Seattle, like I just said, or just even this LeBron James dunks at home, and all of them would come up. And then there'd be like a starring system. So if it was just like a good dunk, it'd be 1 star. If it was like a really good dunk or, I don't know, a windmill or something, 2. And then 3 stars is sort of the best you could have in anything, whether it's like this amazing cinematic shot or you hit a game winner or anything like that. So when you're editing, sort of your first step to gather footage would be to go into this internal system that we had and find all that footage. So that was sort of my first like position with the NBA. And then from there, at the time, NBA Entertainment was also the host of NBA TV. It was in the same building. Now NBA TV, I think most people know, is in Atlanta. It's in the Turner Studios, the same as like inside the NBA. But that didn't happen until 2008, 2009, if I remembered something like that. Um, and my after I logged, I went to NBA TV, and I could have. I guess a lot of other people started PAing with NBA Entertainment, but in my head, I knew people at NBA TV from interning,
Mhm.
and I also knew I could sort of be more hands-on. I wanted to edit right away. That's what I knew I wanted to do. So with NBA TV, there's a lot of opportunity because it's live. It was live. It was just a live station all the time, so they needed so much content. Whereas again, I'm aging myself, but back in the day, like 2004, there wasn't like an opportunity. Like I think what kids can't appreciate right now is the process it took to climb up in production.
Right.
And I see it now because I hire kids 22, 21, whatever, like to film on docu-series that I'm working on. And the cameras, you didn't have access to really dope cinema cameras until about 2009, 2008. So when you were coming in, everything was these tape cameras. It used to be called the Vericam. That was like the nice field camera. Well,
Mhm.
that camera was like $75,000. So like you don't have even the opportunity to get good on that camera,
Mhm.
right? So you're starting out as a PA, and a PA is like you're gonna go get tapes for the camera, you're gonna get the crew water, you're gonna carry the tripod, you're gonna, do whatever they say you need to do. And for me, just I knew myself, I was like, I wanted to be more sort of into working. I didn't want to just be someone's assistant, And I don't think there's a wrong way to do it. I just knew what I wanted to do and I wanted to edit. So I went straight to NBA TV. And the benefit was I could edit right away. The down part is it was live TV. So it's not really like creative editing. It's like, hey, we need a highlight from that Memphis game in 20 minutes. And it's got to be 45 seconds because we're going on air. So I got right into the heat of it. Like I
Mhm.
was editing on a pressure situation with NBA TV, and I did that for like 4 or 5 years. And if anyone's worked in live TV, they'll know I'm not exaggerating, where that is a stressful job because it just doesn't stop. There's no like, oh, I'm gonna chill out today. Today I'm not gonna
Yeah.
go too hard. I'll pick it up tomorrow. It's like every single day you're on the hook for something. And there's like basically like a producer in the middle that's just calling it out. And they're getting messages from the director who's on live TV. And they'll be like, they're filling a show. So maybe the Miami Heat game just ended. Hey, I need a minute on the Miami Heat game right now. And now you have to cut this highlight with what's called a shot sheet, which is basically the text that corresponds to your highlight. And now you got to send that in. And it's like you're doing that all night. And it's just like that's your shift. And then the other thing is that's a night shift. We would go in at like 5 p.m. and leave at like 2 a.m. So there was definitely a sort of a sacrifice in the sense that, yeah, you want to edit, but you have to go live this grind to go do that. But I knew I wanted to learn a skill. And at the time, I didn't know how long I was going to be at the NBA. I ended up being there a long time. But at the time, I was like, I got to learn some stuff before I get out of here. Because I didn't go to college for production. I thought I was going to be a teacher. And then I sort of switched at the end. But even back then, like if you weren't going to a film school, they weren't teaching you a lot of stuff because
Right.
technology,
Yeah.
well, they were teaching you stuff. It just wasn't relevant to what the world you were going into. Like
Yeah.
technology was about to shift and everything was going to change. So, um, yeah, that's basically the start of it. And then I could go on with I'll wrap up my NBA career as quick as I can. But basically in 2008, 2009, like I mentioned, NBA TV went down to Turner. Um, I was fortunate enough to stay on because a lot of people got let go from NBA TV. And I went over to original production, which was really a blessing because that was exactly what I wanted to do. I was sort of doing documentary content on the side. At that point, I had already done a documentary with a friend called The Blackout, which is on Rucker Park.
Mhm.
So I knew I really liked documentaries. And at the time, original production with NBA Entertainment was doing the documentaries. I got in, started editing there, and then technology sort of shifted. And at the NBA, you were sort of asked to do a lot. You were asked to edit, you were asked to produce, you were asked to shoot as like a producer, just as like a second camera. So when technology changed, images that you weren't able to get on these field cameras, which were basically like camcorders,
Right.
like, that your dad would bring to the beach and film you, it was the 5D came out, the Mark II. Canon, yeah, the 5D Mark II sort of changed the game. You could shoot at 24 frames a second, you could shoot at 60 frames a second, and you were able to have these interchangeable lenses, which were photo lenses, which is still like how people are shooting on the A7S III, stuff like that, same setup. But that was new to us. So like you were able to rack focus. You were able to have like a shallow depth of field. You were able to like change from a fixed lens to, oh, I want to put on a long lens. So you were able to get all these shots that you weren't able to get for years unless you had $100,000 setup. So that sort of changed the game for me. So I went from being like strictly an editor to producing crews sometimes to um I bought I bought a Canon 7D in 2011. And that was the first DSLR I had. So it was sort of like a baby Mark II, but the technology was made by Canon, and that's what allowed us to like get that. And that year I was testing out the camera any place I could. And I had already had a relationship with the guy at Rucker Park, Greg Marius, who passed away a couple of years ago. Um, rest in peace, Greg. He's a great guy. He was revolutionary in basketball, to be honest. He changed a lot of stuff in terms of hip hop and basketball, bringing it together. That's what he did at Rucker.
Okay.
But that year, I had already had a relationship from the blackout from producing it with my friend Edgar Burgos, and then I met Greg. So I was on Facebook sitting at the NBA, and I saw on Facebook that Kevin Durant was going to Rucker that night. And I had off. I was getting off in a couple hours. I was like, oh, I'm going to go up there. Like, I'm going to hit up Greg, see if I can go up there. I was like, Greg, can I come through? And Greg was gracious enough to let me come through. And that was a big deal because Greg didn't just, it's not like what people think. Like, it's not like a high school game where you could just show up. Like,
Yeah.
even Dykeman, you could sort of show up and get shots. Greg ran a tight ship. Like, he didn't let anybody that wasn't internal. Sorry, the sun's coming in crazy here.
Oh, all good.
He didn't let anybody that wasn't internal shoot at Rucker. So I got to go in, and I was just going to shoot 60 frames a second. I was like, I've never been able to do that with basketball, and Kevin Durant showing up. So that's going to be dope. And then it ended up being like a magical night. Like, KD put on a show. Like, it's still probably the most famous footage that I shot, besides like just NBA stuff that, I have no real access to. But yeah, KD went crazy, scored 66 points, became this big viral moment. He hit like 5-6 threes in a row. And when I got home, I uploaded that to YouTube, and YouTube was still like sort of young, maybe like 2 or 3 years old, 4 years old. I don't really know. It was young. It wasn't like it is now where everyone's on YouTube. Far from that. And I uploaded it, and it was up the next morning. And I remember like comments on the video were like, is this really from like last night? Like, it was sort of like knew that it was like immediate turnaround. And the thing just blew up, dude. Like, blew up.
Oh yeah.
Like,
That video is everywhere. It's still to this day. It's
yeah.
insane. That all
The
the people crowding
anniversary
him
is coming up.
around. It's
The anniversary is
unbelievable.
coming up in a couple of days. It's like August 1st.
It's yeah.
So I say that story, and I go that whole long route to say that even though I was at the NBA, even though I was producing, editing, and sometimes shooting at the NBA, I already had done a documentary. That sort of legitimized me with a lot of people, in the sense where they were like, oh, shoot, you shot that? And from there, I got a lot more shooting opportunities within the NBA, but then also outside the NBA. Hawk Films found me from that video, and Hawk Films was like a really dope documentary company in New York City. So I started working on their 30 for 30s. Yeah, that was sort of my big stepping stone into the shooting world. And it gave my self-confidence too, because it came out to be this like dope moment. And like, Bill Simmons wrote an article on it, and that blew it up. I was getting calls from China. Like, my phone literally shut off the next day. It was getting hit up so much.
Wow.
It's been in Nike commercials. It's been in NBA commercials. Yeah, it just became like a really dope thing for me. And then even within like people I had worked with for like close to a decade were like, oh, you could shoot, like, like stuff like that. So that helped me a lot. And then, DSLRs stayed prevalent. Like, they were a cheaper option. So like, now, instead of you have to hire a crew with an audio guy or producer and a shooter, which is expensive, they would just send somebody out with like a 5D or, a 7D. And now you're able to, obviously there's going to be some fallback, right? Your audio is not going to be as good. A producer and a shooter that are professional obviously have more skills and they have more know-how. But at the end of the day, people were able to start to cover more for cheaper. And we still see that route now. Like, you could now get into shooting. Like, an athlete's not going to hire, if an athlete wants content for their YouTube page or for their Instagram or for their TikTok, they're not going to hire a traditional camera crew with a guy on a shoulder camera, an audio guy, and a producer coming through. Like, they're never going to do that. They're just going to find somebody that has like an A7S, an FX6 at best, and they're going to pay that kid cheap because he could do it all. And there's going to be a little bit of fallback, but that's really what we're seeing now started back then. It's like a 10-year-old process. Like, before that, it was very traditional camera crews. So that helped me, and it got me in, and it got me out of the editing world. I still like to edit, but to be honest, I like to edit my own stuff. I don't like to edit other people's stuff. Um, and now I make most of my money just shooting. So I have clients. I'm a freelancer. So just to bring it up to speed, I have sort of the same clients I had even back then in 2011. I still work with the NBA. I still work with the UFC. Still work with Hawk Film sometimes. And then me and my friend Anthony Kazwanza, we started Fresh Focus Sports. Show a little love there. And
Did you want to go into that a little bit? Fresh Focus Sports.
yeah, so that was basically, I started Fresh Focus Sports right from the start, really, man. To be honest, dude, like me and my friend Rob Carbuccia started something similar to it. It was just Fresh Focus Productions, and we rebranded it years down the line when we just started doing our own content. But basically, what that was for me, it's sort of like what you're doing now. Like, you're interviewing people because you just had success with it. You found out you liked it, and you're like, oh, let me start to interview people and see if this leads to anything. Fresh Focus was me at the NBA being like, I'm not getting the opportunity to shoot. I'm not getting the opportunity to edit documentaries. I'm not getting the opportunity. All this stuff is in your head, right? And you're young. So, like, of course, you're not getting opportunities. But in your head, you're like, I could do more. I could do more. So, Fresh Focus to me was like, anything that I'm going to do on the side, I'm just going to put it under this brand. So, that documentary that I told you, The Blackout, and in August of this year will be the 20th anniversary of the game. That was like, I could tell the story of this documentary. I know I can. My friend Edgar had the idea. He had his own production company, and I was like, I could do this. I know I can. And I don't, and so I'm just going to do it. And I had a camera. It was before the DSLRs came out. So it was like a video camera. It wasn't really that good, but we would go around and interview people that were attached to the story. And I knew how to edit, and I had all the footage because of Greg, and I started to cut that documentary. So that was probably the first big project under Fresh Focus. But then, and then I finished it. It took me a while. It took me like a year and a half, but I did it. And then I had a documentary that I did. And then my confidence that I could cut a documentary was like this, right? I had already cut. It started, the rough cut was like 2 hours. It came down to like an hour documentary. But that was before I even switched over to original production in the NBA. So by the time I switched over and now I had to cut like a 3-minute section on a documentary, I was like, come on, man. Of course I could do that. I just did a whole thing. I just wrote and edited a whole documentary by myself. That's 60 minutes and it's solid. So, like, even if whatever you're doing on the side is not making you money, like this interview is not making you money, you're going to grow skills from it. You're going to be like, oh, I should have asked them that, or my camera wasn't set up right. Like, all those things you have to learn. So, like, when you are getting paid to do it, your money.
Yeah.
Because the one thing in production, I'll tell people, and I tell people this all the time, like, when you get your opportunity, you have to be good. Like, if I would have got my opportunity with the UFC and I sucked, well, I wouldn't be working for the UFC right now, because they would have just moved on to the next guy.
No,
In
100%.
the documentary world, you don't have time to be like, hey, this is how we're going to do it. No, like, it's only happening once. I can't tell that athlete to get back in the cage and do anything. You got to nail it in the moment. So you got to get your skills right to the point where you nail it. Like, I mean, you can't be perfect. Nobody's perfect, but you also can't fail completely and be like, oh, I didn't know I had to press record. Like, like, obviously that's a dumb scenario, but for real, like, you got to kill it. Like, when you got your opportunity, otherwise they're just going to move on, especially now, dude, because everyone's trying to get into this world. Everyone shoots, everyone's creating content on Instagram. So yeah, my advice to people, like, that's what Fresh Focus was. It was a side thing to do my own personal projects that I wanted to tell, for one, because I knew I could do them. But two, I wanted to, like, having ownership in your own stuff is dope. I mean, I've shot LeBron 100,000, I mean, not 100,000, 100 to 1,000 times, right? But I don't own any of that footage. That's all the NBA's. I shot KD once at Rucker Park, and I own that footage, and I've made money on that footage, selling it for commercials, like, so there's a power in having ownership of stuff, and
Yeah.
that's what Fresh Focus Sports was. To update Fresh Focus Sports now, um, we do a lot of docu content. I mean, I try to respect my clients where I don't infringe on what they're doing. So I don't do a lot of NBA or UFC or anything like that. But I do a lot of high school basketball docu-series. So I take all the skills I learned from the NBA and I bring it to the high school world. And, you know, from a documentary standpoint, high school basketball is almost funner to cover than NBA. That sounds stupid, because most people haven't filmed the NBA. So they're like, yeah, right. I'd rather film LeBron. I'd rather film KD. And I get that. I was definitely there at a point. But what happens is when you're at that high of a level, whether it's UFC, whether it's
Yeah.
NBA, is everything's professional and corporate. And you can't just film whatever you want and go talk to whoever you want. There's PR people, there's protocol. With high school, it's carte blanche. I'm miking up the coach every single day. If they lose, you're filming the kids crying, the coach yelling at them. You're not getting that access in professional sports because those people are brands, and like the team would have to approve everything. It's like there's a lot of things that have to happen. So if someone's looking to get their skills up, do not let the level of the sport deter you from doing that. You could learn more filming with a high school team than you can with an NBA, because you're just going to have so many more opportunities and you're going to be on the hook to do everything yourself. And that's really the key. Even if you don't want to be an audio guy, if you learn how to do audio, well, now when you're producing an audio guy, you know what his issues are. You know what he's going through. Same thing with the camera guy. You might not want to shoot, but if you know how to shoot, you know that you have to give him a little patience to set up the camera, set up the white balance, set the frame rate, format the cards. Like having all those know-hows are only going to make you better in whatever you're doing.
Yeah. What I guess you can say in the world of production and documentary cinematography, what about this makes it so fulfilling, that career? Just being able to build the connections and relationships you had with people, or
I Yeah, I think it's different to each person. I think that's like a personality question. For me, it was like I was in the edit room for so long, dude, like decade plus.
yeah,
That starts to get boring, man. Like I loved it. I really did love telling stories in that way, but you're drinking a lot of coffee, you're eating a lot of bad food, and you're sitting in an edit room. And for me, I just wanted to experience those things. So now all those sporting events, like I love sports and I love film. Now I get to experience those all in the moment. And then connecting with athletes is also cool, obviously, but it's also more of just like I'm not working a 9 to 5
yeah,
or whatever it was,
yeah,
like 5 in the morning, 5 at night to 1 in the morning. Like you even might work harder in the field, right? Like I just filmed a fighter that was training at 1:30 in the morning, but it's like fun. Like in a way, it's fun. It becomes a grind. Like the traveling is a grind. I'm at the point where I want to travel less, but your experiences are cool. And then you get to tell these stories of people. Like that's like a cool feeling, especially if you're the only camera there in like intimate moments. It just took me away from being in an office and stuck in an office and being able to experience it for myself. Um, and that to me was cool. Like, you know, I I sort of always I use an example like if someone was telling me the best high school basketball player in New York City was playing, and if I could go and sit front row, or if I could go and be on the baseline with my camera, I'd rather take my camera. Like I'd rather film it and see it through the lens than just see it through like sitting there. So for me, that's like a good way of like summing up. Like I enjoy doing what I'm doing. So like obviously there's times filming you're like, damn, I don't want to go film that, or
yeah,
do we really need to go get this shot or whatever it is. But overall with sports, I like to film. So I like to experience that sport through my lens. Um and yeah, that's sort of a good way to sum it up, is like it's enjoyable to me. So and then I get to have all these life experiences. I went all around the world with my camera, whereas with the edit room I was stuck in an edit room. So to me it was a no-brainer. Like I've hit
yeah.
6 of the 7 continents just filming.
Wow. And
So
that's another travel, right? I mean, I was gonna ask about that. I mean, I know you said it's a grind, but That's probably the
Yeah,
only.
it's a grind, but that's just like in the last year or two, I've sort of felt that just because it sort of
Oh yeah,
impacts your social life, your family life, all that stuff, you know? Um, but nah, traveling's awesome. Like, dude, I literally got to see Africa,
that's
Australia,
sick.
you
Yeah,
know, like places that I probably never would have went to just for fun.
yeah,
Um, you know, most of my traveling when I'm doing it for fun is I have a ton of family in Greece, so I go back to Greece. Um, but yeah, I've got to see a lot of cool spots, man. Um, South America, Brazil. I was there for the Olympics with 2016 USA basketball team. Australia, I was there with the 2019 USA basketball team. In Africa, I was there for the African Games with the NBA. So like you get to see like all these parts of the world, and then that opens up just like your experiences. That opens up you as a person. You start to appreciate things more or less or whatever it is. Yeah, traveling's amazing. I mean, obviously I'd like to travel for fun a little bit more and not have my camera and all that, but it's cool, man. It's cool. Like you know, the last couple of years we went to the Middle East a lot for Abu Dhabi with the UFC during COVID. So I've been there like 6, 7 times in the last 2 or 3 years. Um, it just opens up your experiences. You become more well-rounded of a person. You become more compassionate, more empathetic because you're seeing everything in the world that, you know, I was in China with the NBA. So it's like, again, there's a lot of places I still want to see, but there's a lot of places I would have never went to just on my own.
right. And I wanted to touch back before we talked about travel a little bit. Like you said, I think everybody's different. Like you sitting in an editing room, edit room wasn't really your thing. You were more of the shooting side. But how
But it
important
was
is
though.
it?
I don't want to completely down editing. Like I did it
Oh
for a
yeah,
decade, dude. It's not
oh
like I
yeah,
was like a year and I'm done. Like I did it for over a decade of sitting
right.
in it.
You know, that's my. It's like it's that important to have every skill though, right? Even if it's not as much as your passion, but to even be that versatile, you could say. You know, knowing everything.
Yeah, especially now, dude.
Yeah,
Especially now, because I feel like the way people are going to get hired now is someone's going to want you to do everything. They're going to want you to shoot it, they're going to want you to produce it, and they're going to want you to edit it, and they're going to pay you whatever you discuss, whatever you do is going to be a flat rate in that sense. That is not the world I necessarily grew up in. I was at like the edge of the other world where
yeah,
it was like producer, shooter, audio, edits completely different. That's the world I entered. I was there for the transition. So like we had to navigate that ourselves. Luckily for me, I was already going that route of learning all those skills. So it didn't impact me that much. But if you are strictly an audio guy right now, or you strictly film, or you strictly do this, strictly do that, it it could still work out, but you have to have high end clients. And if you don't have high end clients, they're not doing it that way. So like if you're just trying to come up, and I'm sure most of these listeners are your age, 21, 22, I doubt there's a lot of people hiring them just to produce a shoot, right? Like that's fair. Like
yep,
they're going to ask them to produce it, do the audio, shoot it, and then edit it. And that was not what it was 20 years ago. People could do it, but that's not what the standard was. So it's definitely beneficial. Now, there's plenty of people that are 21 and 22 that can go into that route, but you're going to have to be at the top of your game. Yeah, like if you're directing a commercial, I doubt they're going to want you to do audio on it, right? Like I doubt they're going to want you to film it. They want you to direct it.
right.
But to get to that point where you're directing a commercial for a big campaign, you're going to have to be nice at what you do, and you're going to have to climb a lot of positions, a lot of ladders, unless you just have that hookup that gets you into the door. I didn't have that hookup. Like I just didn't. I had to pretty much earn, and not to say that other people didn't, but everything
Oh
I
yeah,
did, I had to just get myself pretty much. So if you're lucky enough to have something like that where you could get in as a director, I mean, God bless you. But for the most part, most people are going to start out doing like, hey, this basketball team is hiring me. They want me to film it. They want me to cut a 2-minute piece on it and post it to their YouTube. So like even that, like posting to your YouTube in a big company might be a whole nother position. That might be like a tech position, right? Like having all those skills is going to make you more versatile. Now, I would say if you do stay with all those skills and just do it, there's a chance you can't raise to the highest position, right? Like, again, like I use the director in commercial, like the guy that's filming, I don't know, think of a movie that's out, Oppenheimer right now, right? I don't even know who filmed it, but the guy who's filming that, he's not asked to do anything else. He's not asked to produce. He's not asked. He's so dope at what he does. And he's so elite that that's what he's doing. I'm just saying for the masses of people to have your options open, you should learn everything. That would be my advice. Someone might give different advice, but I would say this, even if you don't plan on using it, it's still not going to hurt to know that stuff.
Right.
You know?
And you getting that extra practice in. Would you also say, just I guess to a college student or aspiring person looking to get into this industry, how important is it to just say yes to every opportunity, even if it's like you said, not making money or just getting that experience? That's probably another thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think saying yes to opportunities is definitely a good thing. I might have struggled with doing too much of that. So I I would say, like, that's weird. It's weird because it's definitely true, right? It's definitely true. You say yes to every opportunity, right? But at the same point, there comes a time where you're gonna have to say no, and you're gonna be like, "Nah, dude, you're gonna have to pay me for that," right?
Right.
I look at it like this: there's always going to be a level of, is it benefiting me to do this or is it benefiting them more? Right? If you're dope at what you do and someone, like, if you've already now done hours of filming and you've already gotten your skills up and you're like, I could do this blindfolded, and someone's like, I need you to come here and do this for free, I might maybe not say yes to that opportunity because that's benefiting them. That's not really benefiting you. What I would say yes to is every opportunity is something that's going to benefit you that no one's paying you to do, right? Like, if no one's paying you to film, you filming for free, you're not getting done over on because no one's paying you to film. You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you got
Yeah.
to get your skills up, whether it's
Yep.
your skills up, whether it's good for your reel, whether it's good for this, that is still in your favor because now you have this footage, you have this opportunity. If you want to film, that you're getting an opportunity to film, right? Like, otherwise you would have had to coordinate a shoot on your own, get people together to film something that might not be organic. Now, that's what you have to decide. You have to decide when it's in your favor and when it's not. At some point, it's not going to be in your favor to say yes to every opportunity.
Right.
Early on, it probably is, but I think you have to gauge that. If someone's just like, I need you to edit a bunch of like crap, like a bunch of like, I don't know, like highlight videos that you don't want to do. And you're like, dude, I'm done doing highlight videos. I've been doing them since I was 7, like, then it's probably not to say yes to. But if, I don't know, you're trying to get into the documentary world and someone's like, man, I really could use your help editing, and you could cut this 2-minute section on this documentary, and no one else is giving you an opportunity to cut on documentaries, and you don't have footage to cut a documentary, or you don't have this, you don't have the access to edit, you don't have this. Yeah, that's probably worth doing if that's what your goal is to do, is to cut documentaries. So I think, like, you sort of have to gauge when they're getting over on you and when you're getting over on them. And it might not be you're getting over on them, you're making all this money, but you might be getting an opportunity that no one's giving you. So, like when I did the blackout, I did that for free. We ended up making a little money on it, but I did that for free. But that for free was a documentary that I still talk about to this day. The 20th anniversary is going to come out. I'm still going to get more hits on my YouTube channel for it, right? Like the Kevin Durant, I showed up and did that for free. I
Does
made
Katie
money.
know about that? Like, he knows that you did it?
Yeah, like, I mean, I was at the NBA still at the same
Right.
time. I
That's what I
did
was
it
gonna
on my
ask.
own,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mentioned that to him to a nauseum. I'm sure at some point he was like, "Yeah, dude, I know you shot that."
I mean, he's all
But
over social media, so he probably knows,
yeah,
right? I mean, he probably
yeah,
watches
nah,
a
KD's
lot.
pretty chill, dude. He's like a down to earth, just like low key
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've mentioned it to him several times after the fact. Um, but my point is like, some free opportunities are gonna be maybe the best thing you ever shoot, or, like, I've done a lot of documentaries. I wish I could have done the blackout later in life when I had more skills, but the blackout might be one of the best stories I've gotten to tell. it's Jay-Z versus Fat Joe in a Rucker championship.
That's
That doesn't happen because New York City blacks out. So, like, that's a dope story. Like, there's A-listers upon A-listers in that documentary. Um, so, like, you gotta figure out what's free and what's not. But bro, like, I've been doing this forever and I still will shoot free stuff, but I do it for fresh focus. Because for me, the same thing I was just telling you, I'm building this brand. So if I feel like something's going to be good for my channel or good with a relationship that I'll start with an athlete and I know they're going to be pumped with whatever I shoot and it's not going to take a lot of time, I'll still shoot it for free. Because for free is, oh, it's going on my channel, right? Like, if you're an athlete and ESPN hits you up and they're like, we want to do a story on you, ESPN is not making you pay them,
yeah,
right? So if I'm trying to be an ESPN type of a platform or a documentary platform that does content, I can't expect everyone to pay me. Now, if you reach out and they're like, yo, we love your work, we want you to film this, yeah, I'm going to give you a quote. And if you pay it, you pay it. If not, we probably won't work together. But if I see an athlete that I like, that I want to film with, I like his story, da 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 da. When I approach him, I can't be like, yo, and you got to pay me this. They might not want to do it. I'm
yeah,
doing it because I want it for my channel. So like that just sort of proves what I was saying. Like there's this like thing where it's like benefits you, benefits them. Like I'm trying to build Fresh Focus as a thing. If I don't always get people hitting me up that they want paid content, well then my channel is going to die,
right,
you know?
yeah,
So yeah, I think it's each individual person, but there's no way you're going to get better shooting, not shooting. There's no way you're going to get better editing, not editing. So whether you're doing it free for somebody else or doing it for yourself, just practicing, you're going to have to do it.
right. I think that kind of says a lot. How about kind of you mentioned about your story coming out of college around 2003, just working your way up and stuff like that. What would you like? Would you think back then in '03 that you'd be able to do all this stuff, building a brand, working on 30 for 30s, shooting UFC fighters? Did you ever think it would get to this point?
Nah, to be honest, I didn't. My goal when I was doing it, when I started with the NBA, is like there used to be like sort of a position where it was like you were an editor and you were cutting like weekly features and they were like the dopest features in the building and they would like be like a really cool story on like the stars of the league.
Right.
I thought that's what I was going to do. Like that was sort of my aspirations, like just get to a point where I'm like one of the dopest editors in the building and I'm just cutting all like cool projects and like cuz that was what was in front of me. All this stuff started to happen. I think that's one thing that will happen is like you hit these little barometers, you're like, "Oh, I could do that. Let me see if I could do that," you know? And I think that's why I told that KD story cuz I already knew I could film at that point. Um, I started filming for a high school channel before that. I didn't even mention that. MSG Varsity came out and they were just shooting highlights on local teams. And I got hired to film with them. And that really helped just like the ergonomics of like my camera skills because you were filming, basketball, football, baseball, but you were also filming badminton, fencing, field hockey, all this random stuff that is going to work on other skills. So I knew I could film when I filmed the KD thing, but even the fact that everyone else went crazy on it and like I got a lot of like street cred, so to say, or just like uh cred within the industry,
Right, right,
that made me be like, oh shit, maybe I could do this. Like maybe I could go be the one that films with them or whatever. And then that next notch of working with Hawk Films and him being awesome enough to use me on like projects that they were doing and I'd be like the main guy and like I wasn't getting paid a ton, but like I was learning a ton. And that gave me another thing. It's like, oh, I could do this. I just went on the road with him for 4 days and we filmed and we did a feature on this soccer player. Like, if I do this for however many other companies, I could do this for the whole year. So like you start to build confidence like as you get these little moments. Um, so no, in 2004 when I graduated college, I didn't think that was possible. I was just thrilled to be with the NBA, like legit, like
yeah. Like starstruck moment. You're just having
yeah, bro, for sure.
yeah,
Like, I was gonna be a teacher. I was gonna
yeah,
be like a history teacher, and
100%, yeah,
then and then I'm like at the NBA finals or like All-Star, and
It's
you're like, yo, this is
yeah,
crazy. Like I want whatever I got to do to stick around, I'm gonna stick around. And
right.
then that held on for 4 or 5 years. But then like anything else, that wears off. So there has to be something else. And then the actual passion of production started to kick in. And
Yeah,
then that's what's
you
helped.
gotta have that passion on top of the drive.
Yeah, and that's what's held me the last 15 years. Maybe the first couple of years were like, "Oh, that's LeBron James." Like,
Yeah,
like, that's, like, cool,
yeah,
like, After that, it's just, like, you actually have to love what you're doing because at the end of the day, after you've seen stars, whatever, it's not gonna be as cool anymore.
right. Like seeing Steph Curry get shots up close is not that was cool back then, but now it's
Nah, that's still cool. You gotta use a better
that guy
example.
doesn't miss.
Steph
I gotta
shooting
miss
is
the better one. Right.
yeah, but
That's
Steph shooting is unbelievable. I could watch that at any point.
no, that really it's like an art that those practice warm-ups and stuff, what he does. People get there
Yeah.
like an hours before to see it. So yeah, that was a bad example. That's all.
Nah, yeah, nah, but I know what you're saying. I think it's more of just like seeing guys walk in the hallway and stuff
Yeah,
like that. Like
yeah,
that used to actually excite me. Like I literally remember seeing Steve Nash for the first time at All Star, and I was just like not even excited on the starstruck, but just the perspective. I was like, dude, he's like my height. I was like, that guy made it to the NBA. I was like, oh my god, like like you're just seeing things in person
yeah,
where you're like the curtain sort of revealed. Like everything you see on TV is this like, whatever. But when you
yeah,
see it in person, you're like, dude, that's guy's my height and he's two-time
yeah,
MVP, this and that. So
yeah,
like, yeah, I think that still is always cool, but it sort of wears off and you have to love what you're doing for it to be successful down the road because the allure of it is gonna rub
yeah.
off.
I'll tell because I definitely been fortunate to grow up and like be around players and see him at an early age. But I'll tell you, this year at Summer League, Wemby is seeing him in person is it's insane. I had to take a breath, for a second. I was like, holy
He's
shit,
huge, right?
he's guy's massive, man. It's crazy.
I haven't seen him yet in person, actually.
I mean, you could just I was okay, he's real. I had to take a breath for a second to see if he was actually a real person, but no, that was pretty cool to see. You kind of talked about the UFC fighters, how if you follow them around for weeks or so, and those are your guys, you root for them in the ring. Because you did I watched some of the Purpose Over Dream stuff for Fresh Focus Sports, the AZ Compass Prep. Like those guys see him in college. It's kind of the same thing where you root for them.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
saw Kylan Boswell. He got some minutes this year for Arizona.
Yeah, he was the youngest player in college basketball,
Oh, I
this
really?
year.
He's
Yeah, I
good,
did.
man.
I went
Yeah,
and filmed him in Arizona. That's sort of a perfect example of like, yeah, dude, I'm watching their box score all the time. If I'm not
right.
watching their
Yeah,
game, like I'm keeping up on it. I became really good friends with his dad. Um, yeah, man, that totally happens, dude. I'm rooting for all those kids at AZ Compass Prep. That was
yeah,
an amazing series I got to work for 2 years. I follow their college careers and whether they know it or not, like I'm one of their biggest fans, because they're in a very point of their career where basketball is like from 17 to 21, like so
yeah,
much can change.
yeah,
Like some are gonna make it to the NBA, some aren't. Some are gonna have successful college careers, some aren't. And it's hard to even gauge when they're in high school because they're all so talented. There's just so much that goes along with it, like opportunity, um, progressing as a player, staying disciplined. Um, but opportunity is a big one in college. And then, if they're lucky enough to make it to the NBA, it's like that's like winning the lotto. So yeah, I'm rooting for all those kids.
and they love high school. They love the access, right? The cameras around them. I mean,
Yeah, that's also the great part about high
yeah,
school. Like they're still cool with the camera. Whereas like you start to get to NBA, it's like they've been filmed their whole lives. They're not, I mean, they're not hating the camera, but they're not
yeah,
like excited that,
yeah,
how it is when you're in high school, like
yeah.
the
I
camera.
wasn't good enough to have a camera around me, but I would definitely.
No, me neither. But I'm just saying when you're in high school, if there is a camera around, you could see how it gets exciting.
Yeah, yeah, I know, yeah, 100%. Um, but yeah, no, that's for people who haven't. I just give it a shot. Check out that YouTube account of Fresh Focus Sports. There's some really good stuff there. The documentary series, it's a great watch. Um, what about Poirier or Gaethje? How about that one this weekend?
Um, I don't know, man. I'm not following any of those guys, but I still feel weird giving a prediction just because I
Yeah,
work
yeah, yeah. I
so
know.
much with it. But I mean, it's going to be a war. You could guarantee that. Yeah, it's going to be a war. I mean, the last one, I'm pretty sure Poirier won. I'm assuming he's the favorite again on this, but that's a hard fight to tell because so much of it comes down to like heart and fighting, and those two of those guys have two of the biggest hearts in the whole company.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's going to be a war. You could pretty much guarantee that. And the tickets are like selling out like insane here in Utah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Is this has it ever been in Salt Lake City or?
yeah, last year, which was like one of the craziest UFC fights ever, where Leon Edwards knocked out Kamaru Usman with like 50 seconds left, and Kamaru was on his way to the victory easily. He was
Okay.
up like 3 rounds to 1. Essentially, if you put it in like football terms, like it was like a Hail Mary, onside kick, another Hail Mary. Because there's 50 seconds left.
Wow.
If he just
Yeah.
runs away
Yeah.
for 50 seconds, he wins that fight. Um, so yeah, that was one of the most legendary fights ever was here last year.
What's that? Because I've never been to a UFC fight, boxing fight. What's the atmosphere like in there? Because compared to, I guess, a basketball game, you could say, is it?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like there's certain moments that are amazing. Like the walkouts are like
That's
amazing.
sick. Yeah. That's
Everyone, you know
yeah.
what the biggest thing difference than other sports is? It's the anticipation. So
Right.
like everyone's had all this content, whether it's boxing and you're watching Showtime All Access, another show that I filmed with in the past, or you're watching our Embedded series. Everything is leading up to these guys, right? They face off during the week, so there's tension. Then they face off again on Friday, so there's more tension. If they hate each other, there's tension. They're talking crap on Twitter. And then when they walk out, it's like the last bit of anticipation is like building and building, and their
Yeah.
song gets you rocking. The fans are going crazy. And then, like, when they're about to meet, that's the biggest difference than most sports. Like, most sports don't have that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying it's the best sport live or anything like that, but it's that anticipation where you could cut the tension like in the room. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, they're about to fight. Like, like everyone's like so pumped. Like,
Yeah.
that's sort of the difference than other sports. Whereas, like,
Right.
even the NBA finals, they're going to meet 7 times or 4 times at the minimum. So,
Right.
like, even if there is a little tension on game one, it's like, well, we're going to be here in 2 days.
You know what you're getting. It's
This
kind
is
of like,
like,
yeah. It's
this
like,
is
holy
like,
shit, they're playing.
oh
Yeah.
my God, dude, I can't believe they're about to fight. Like, that's usually the best moment when that feeling is there. And it's not there for every fight. I'm not saying that. But
Yeah.
when that feeling exists, it's like it's I remember when I first started filming fights, but I will wrap this up though, because I have to actually go film a guy getting his hair cut. But when I first started filming fights, I legitimately used to be nervous filming because of that feeling. You're following this guy the whole week. They're like, yo,
Yeah.
they're about to fight.
Yeah.
I've gotten over that. But like that's like a legit thing where you're like, I can't believe they're about to actually do this. Habib versus McGregor was definitely one of those. And I was
That's
with Habib for like 5 years. So like when they fought, I remember just like couldn't believe they're actually fighting. Like it was like
how's he
actually
with content?
Habib's awesome.
Really?
Habib's awesome. Yeah, like back to what I was saying before, like you have to understand, guys, Habib is a devout Muslim, like
Yeah.
legit, no doubt, like devout Muslim, like one of the most humble, respectful, um, just guys you're gonna meet. So you have to
Right.
respect what he's about. And then he's obviously gonna respect you, but you can't go in and disrespect things that he does, whether it's with his religion, whether it's with his culture, or whether it's how he fights his camp.
Right.
So you have to have that ultimate respect for him, and he's gonna have that for you. But you also have to like educate yourself on who you're dealing with. Like there's a lot of rules that he lives by. So when you film him, you have to respect all those rules, how he's presented on camera, um, all that stuff. So, you know, he doesn't want to be. Actually, I shouldn't even say this, but I was going to say, like, I always respected this. I never really filmed him when he prayed because they pray 5 times a day. I just felt like that was his personal time.
Right.
Um, it's not like he would ever be like, yo, don't film this, but you just sort of respect that unless like maybe somebody's calling for it for a specific thing. But for our show, we usually weren't. So like it's just about having respect for who he is. Um, And yeah, he was awesome. I mean, for a guy that didn't speak English that great, he was super charismatic and funny. Like if he only knew, like from 2017 when I started filming with him, he would only say like little phrases in English, but they were always funny and on point, you know? So like he was a pleasure. He was a pleasure to film with. I'll give you one thing that I break down about Habib is like just I watched his stardom just go crazy. Is in 2017 when I first filmed with him, he had just bought like I don't know if it was a Prius or it was like a Hyundai. It was like some small little car. And we were in San Jose where he trains, and we were going to a track to go film him run. And I got in shotgun and he was driving. And that was it. And his boys like met us there a little bit after because it was like really early in the morning. You fast forward to his last fight in Abu Dhabi, I think it was 2021, maybe 2022. There is 5G wagons everywhere we went, and I'd be in the fifth one in the back, and Habib's up here. And not that he got too cocky or anything like that. It's just his stardom just grew like
Yeah.
crazy. He's probably the most famous Muslim athlete in the world. Maybe not now because he's not a current athlete, but at the time, like his fan base was insane.
Insane.
Like when we would be at San Jose, all like this whole group would come and give him a send off. Like people didn't even know that they were just Muslims that just loved how he handled himself and respected how he handled himself. It's in Embedded, it's in the series. Like they would give him a send off and he would take pictures with all of them and they would sing him songs. And like it was just like, man, like this dude is turning into a superstar, like right in front of your eyes. And like when I first started filming with him, he was famous, but he wasn't like a superstar. So like that was definitely one thing with him. It was just like he's awesome to film with, but like I witnessed it become like this different thing to film with him.
And being around, you said from 2017 to 2021. I know you're late, but I mean, that's so cool to just be on that long of a time to just be with them. So you
Yeah,
can kind of
that's
grow
probably my
and
favorite
develop.
favorite thing from the UFC is like being a part of his camp,
Yeah.
just because he was so legendary. Um, and he shows a lot of love still. Like I still see him at fights because his cousin is the 155-pound champ, and he has just relatives that are all competing at a very high level. So he'll corner a lot of them, and he still shows a lot of love, and he's still a great dude.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
All right, I'm about to order my Uber to go
Yeah,
film
no, I
this
don't want to
haircut
keep you
scene.
waiting. That Thanasis, I really appreciate it. So we able to manage around that stoppage of the Zoom, so it's good we did that. But
Awesome, bro. I'm happy you're
um
doing this, man. Best of
no,
luck with it.
thank you. Hopefully this turns into something a little bigger. So thank you
For
for
sure.
starting.
Just stay at it. It will.
Yeah. And I'll be back in school. I'll be back in California in like a month or so. So I'll let you
All
know
right,
about
let's
it. If you
link.
ever need help with anything, let me know.
Definitely. Let's link.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for
All right,
that.
bro.
I'm
Peace.
going.